Picture this. You're standing over the corpse of your former father, the man who raised you, trained you, made you into what you are. The emperor of mankind has just struck him down, and now his sons, your brothers, are coming for revenge. You could run. You could escape back to Terra and live. But instead, you kneel beside his body and refuse to leave. You look up at Ezekiel Abaddon, the new leader of your old legion, and you offer them amnesty, forgiveness, a chance to come home. And then Erebus, the architect of everything that went wrong, drives a blade into your back. That's how Garviel Loken died. Not in a glorious battle, but trying to heal a wound that couldn't be healed.
That's horrible. Why would he stay?
Because that's who Loken was. The last loyal Lunar Wolf. A man who never stopped believing that his brothers could be saved, even when they'd already damned themselves. But to understand how one of the most principled space marines ever created ended up dying alone on a demon-infested ship, we need to go back to the beginning, before he was another company captain in the 16th Legion. Garviel Loken was born on Chthoniya, the Lunar Wolf's homeworld, a mining world of endless tunnels and gang warfare. Most recruits from Chthoniya were hard men, survivors who'd clawed their way up from the depths. But Loken was different.
What made him different?
He never stopped asking questions. Most Astartes accept their role without question, their weapons, tools of war. But Loken wanted to understand why they fought, what they were building. He befriended an iterator named Cairo Sinderman, spent hours reading about Terra's history, learning about the dream of human unity. Later, Rogel Dawn himself noticed this quality and told Loken to never lose it.
So he was already standing out?
Exactly. By the time the Great Crusade reached its height, Loken had risen to command the 10th Company. His record was impressive, not just in kills, but in how he led his men. He had this gift for seeing the bigger picture, for understanding that every world they conquered was supposed to become part of something greater. The other captains respected him, especially Tarik Torgadon, who became his closest friend. But here's what made Loken truly unique. He wasn't one of the sons of Horus. You see, many Lunar Wolves bore a facial resemblance to their Primarch. It was considered a mark of favor, a sign of genetic purity. Loken looked nothing like Horus, yet somehow, that outsider status would become his greatest strength.
So when did everything change for him?
When Hasta Sejanus died. Sejanus had been the 4th member of the Mournival, Horus's inner circle of advisors. The position was sacred, a brotherhood that counseled the War Master on everything from military strategy to legion culture. When they needed a replacement, they chose Loken.
That must have been huge for him.
It was unprecedented. For the first time in the Mournival's history, they'd chosen someone who didn't look like Horus. The other members, Ezekiel Abaddon, Horus Aximand, and Tarik Torgadon, vouched for him, said the Legion needed his perspective, his humanity. Suddenly, Loken had the ear of the greatest military commander in human history. At first, it was everything he'd dreamed of. He was helping shape the Great Crusade, bringing his moral compass to the highest levels of Legion command. He believed he could make a difference, help build something worthy of the Emperor's vision. But then came 6319. Loken led his company against the Invisibles, the planet's elite guard. It should have been just another compliance action. But in the Whisperhead Mountains, something impossible happened. Sergeant Xavier Jubal started changing.
Changing how?
His body began to warp and twist, his voice became something else, something that called itself Samus. Loken watched one of his own men become possessed by a demon. For a space marine who'd been taught that such things were just superstition, it was devastating. He'd seen the enemy's true face, and it was beyond anything the Imperial truth could explain. Loken tried to warn the others, but who would believe him? Demons were a myth, weren't they? So he buried the truth and tried to move on. But the seed of doubt had been planted. Things got worse when they encountered the Interrex. Here was a human civilization that had not only survived contact with chaos, but had learned to fight it. Their watch officer, Mithras Tull, spoke to Loken about something called Chaos, the primordial annihilator that corrupted everything it touched.
But the Imperium didn't know about chaos yet?
Officially, no. The Emperor had hidden that truth from his sons, believing ignorance would protect them. But Loken's ignorance actually reassured the Interrex. It proved the Imperium hadn't fallen yet. Unfortunately, Erebus of the Word-Bearers had other plans. He stole an ancient weapon called an anatheme, starting a war that destroyed any chance of alliance. When Horus was wounded by that same weapon on Davin, Loken began to see the pattern. The anatheme was from Zenobia, stolen by Erebus to injure Horus, but by then it was too late. The other Mournival members had already agreed to seek healing from the warrior lodges, secret societies that were spreading through the legions like a virus. And who was behind it? Erebus.
What did Loken do when he realized what was happening?
He investigated. Following Cinderman's advice, he found a hidden chaos temple aboard the Vengeful Spirit. Can you imagine that? A shrine to the dark gods on the War Master's own flagship. When he opened the Book of Lorgar, visions flooded his mind. Horus leading a Black Legion, Terra burning, the Emperor dethroned. Loken fought off demon spawn with his bare hands just to close that book. But the damage was done. He'd seen the truth about what his legion was becoming. When he tried to warn Abaddon, his former brother made it clear that Loken would die after Istvan III, when secrecy would no longer be necessary. That's when Loken reached his moral peak. Knowing he was marked for death, he could have fled, could have warned Terra. Instead, he chose to stay and fight for his men. On Istvan III, when the virus bombs fell, Loken led the survivors. He tore the name Sons of Horus from his armor and declared himself a Lunar Wolf once more.
He rejected his own legion?
He reclaimed its honor. For months, he held the Precentor's palace with a handful of loyalists against overwhelming odds. Death Guard, World Eaters, Emperor's children, anyone who still believed in the Imperial dream fought under his banner. He'd become something more than a captain, more than a Mournival member. He was the conscience of a legion that had lost its soul. The end came when Horus himself descended to finish the job personally. Loken and Torgadon went to face their former brothers, Abaddon and Aximand. In the ruins of the planet's capital, Loken watched Torgadon die at Aximand's hands. Wounded by Abaddon, he was left for dead in the final bombardment.
But he survived?
Against all odds, Malkador the Sigillite found him and recruited him into the Knights Errant, a secret organization of loyalist space marines tasked with fighting chaos. For years, Loken operated in the shadows, infiltrating traitor ships, hunting cultists, doing the work that normal space marines couldn't. But it broke something in him. He'd gone from being a company captain surrounded by brothers to being a lone operative with no legion, no home. The psychological toll was enormous.
So how did he end up back on Horus's ship?
Duty. During the Siege of Terra, the boundaries between reality and the warp began to collapse. Loken found himself aboard the demon-corrupted, vengeful spirit for the final confrontation between the Emperor and Horus. He watched his Gene Father fall, saw the War Master's death, and then
He stayed with the body.
even at the end, Loken believed in redemption. When Abaddon arrived with the surviving sons of Horus, Loken offered them amnesty. He promised to secure their pardons if they'd just lay down their arms and come home. Can you imagine? After everything they'd done, he still believed they could be saved. That's when Erebus struck. The same man who'd orchestrated Horus's fall drove a blade into Loken's back. And in that moment of betrayal, the cycle completed itself. Loken's death created the same kind of warp echo that had first spawned the demon Samus all those years ago.
So his death created the very thing that started his journey?
That's the tragedy of Garviel Loken. He died as he lived, trying to heal wounds that couldn't be healed, believing in people who'd already chosen damnation. He was the last loyal Lunar Wolf, a man who never stopped fighting for the dream of human unity, even when everyone around him had given up. In the end, that's what made him special. Not his tactical genius or his combat skills, but his humanity. In a universe where hope is the first casualty of war, Garviel Loken never stopped hoping. And maybe that's the most heroic thing of all.
If you want to learn more about the Warhammer 40k universe, subscribe and check out the links in the description to read up on Garviel Loken.